Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is James Moss. I am the Managing Director of Curzon Relo. I'm delighted to introduce and to be partnering and working with Chris Hall, who is the Director of PKF O'Connor Davies, who basically runs their global operation amongst many other very busy things I'm sure you get up to. So good afternoon, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm very well, James. Thank you for the introduction and for having me on today. I think you've oversold my position a bit there. I'm in the global mobility practice. I wouldn't say I run their global operation. We have people way above my pay grade for that.
Okay, well, that's excellent. As I say, you're a multi-talented guy. We've known each other for a while, which is fantastic. We both are Brits for our audience out there, and we're both Americans, so lots of crossover. Um,
Indeed.
we won't get into the World Cup. I don't think there's time enough for that. But anyway, it's all very, very exciting. Um, so let's cut to the chase. What we're here today to discuss and chat about together is how the world is moving, how families move, how companies move people. Um, and it is a rapidly changing area. Um, you, Chris, are an expert in taxation, compliance procedures on a local and an international basis. I know you have an extensive team. I'm sure you can tell us more about that. My business specializes in relocation, global mobility, out of New York, out of London. It's international and very tech orientated. And that's sort of how we came together. Is such a natural and dare I say beautiful fit. So let's just bounce into that. So, Chris, what have you been seeing out there? What's the world of modern relocation in June 2026 looking like to you these days?
Yeah, I think for us, James, it's kind of a developing world. Certainly, the trend towards lump sums and permanent relocations, things like that, have continues. Um, I can't really remember the last time I did a full tax equalization. I think I've done one this year. So it's still, from the tax side of things, it seems like that is, that process that we had for so many years is continuing to dwindle. And I think that's true across the board, talking to people in the industry, talking to other tax colleagues at other firms, even some of the traditional big programs, with your large multinationals that have always had these very large programs, the number of people that are getting tax equalized within that is dropping rapidly. This need for the traditional expat where the company says we're going to send you there because we have a critical need and we're going to pay for everything. I think companies are getting a bit savvy. I mean, would you agree with that, James? I know on your side, do you see that kind of curtailing of the let's pay for everything?
Yeah, it's a really great point. It's more of a change the way people are doing things. Um, we're still seeing quite a lot of movement, but we're seeing different sorts of movement. We're seeing companies wanting to give their assignees more independence. We're seeing a lot more sort of lump sum types of things where basically the whole tax issue is sort of put in the assignee's hands. And that's a big one. I mean, it's a really big point. We help them. Also, the lump sum means that when assignees are given a lump sum, the first thing they want to do is want to put the money in the pocket.
Yeah.
That's the first thing you want to do. It's great. It's like Christmas has come early, and it's fantastic news. So put money in your pocket. The next thing is you might go down to your spouse or partner or your mates, get down to a bar and have a drink or a cup of coffee and a bit of a celebration. And then you may start thinking, well, actually, I've got to get my act together. I've got to be, moving from London to New York, and I've got to be there in 3 weeks, and then, I don't really know it very well, and da da da. Um, and that's sort of where we come in, because mainly because of the use of our technology and our hybrid model slashes costs. It allows people to sort of use lump sums very cost efficiently, which HR love because they don't have to worry about it. The assignees love because they keep most of the money in their pocket, or a good chunk of it. They certainly don't have to go out and invest in a massively over hierarchical sort of giant relocation company where they have to do 101 different people and they get loads of stuff they don't need and they're paying for things they don't need. So we've seen that change quite a bit. And also companies generally, Chris, just a bit more savvy. They're already a lot more savvy. I mean, I'm talking about, the companies that move people. I was at the reception at JP Morgan's new headquarters in New York behind me. In fact, I don't think that's actually the World Trade Center. I've been there too. But, the whole approach has changed. I think working from home is also something that sort of dovetails into this. There hasn't been a full return to the office, but grade A offices in New York, where you and I do quite a lot of our stuff. I have this on the lowest vacancy rates ever at the moment.
Oh, wow. Didn't realize
and,
that. Yeah.
and it's really interesting. And the sort of back office people and the sort of more secondary support people are moving to places like Miami and Florida and Texas and stuff like that. All places you guys cover so well, but they're keeping their sort of front of desk, if you like,
Yeah.
here in the city. So yeah, we're seeing a real change, and also you must be coming across a lot of very tech savvy clients, I would imagine, out there now as well.
Yes and no. I mean, the development of the information age, which, to use the old phrase, and now AI, to use the new phrase,
Yeah, yeah,
um, has made everybody an instant genius. The problem that I see from a tax perspective is the old adage of, well, you can get an answer, but what does that answer actually mean? So we have people who come to the table a lot more aware of what they need to do. But certainly from a tax perspective, when I use AI for research, I know the questions to ask it in order to get to the depth of knowledge that I need to get to in terms of a proper tax technical answer. A lot of people who are relocating don't know those particular points to ask and can lead themselves down a path of kind of unexpected ignorance, if you like. I know that's a pretty harsh way of saying it, but they can think one thing, but due to a nuance in how they asked the AI, whatever AI program they're using, they may be missing something that's quite crucial. And that kind of, it reflects to me, and be interested in your thoughts, James, that's kind of, that wider duty of care aspect that was a hot topic at certainly a couple of years ago with COVID, and everyone was talking about duty of care and employee experience and all of this kind of thing. The move towards lump sum and permanent relocations, it kind of feels a little bit against duty of care, because to your point, what if your person sticks all that money in their pocket or wastes it on buying a new BMW, and then they don't get to A to B in a very successful manner, or they don't spend what they need to from a tax advice position and get themselves in trouble. We see that a lot. You know,
Yeah.
the HR sort of priorities a little bit, I feel, are somewhat conflicting. You know, we have this pressure to cut costs, if you like, and find efficiencies. Let's say it the polite way. But at the same time, the clients are looking for that. Oh, we want our people to have a great experience and duty of care. I think that is an area where technology can really help. I know you're doing some interesting stuff there. But I think from tax perspective, we're still a little way away from certainly taking the human out to A, both confirm what people can find out now, but also B, then actually execute on it, because it's AI can tell you how to do everything, but it doesn't necessarily do it for you within a tax program or to fill out a necessary form, that kind of thing.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, AI is a very powerful tool, but it's not something you can rely on entirely. I mean, we use it quite a lot as a bit of guide structure. It's built into our app and so on. But we, like you, it needs to be interactive with human experts on the ground. People who have, all that experience. You have 20, 30 years of experience under your belt, as your team is super experienced. You've done thousands, not tens of thousands of these. AI will give you a guide, but it's not going to get you there. And it's not always right. I mean, often I find
Yep.
that it's inaccurate. It's out of date. It picks up the wrong things. I mean, all sorts of things. Tax is and financial preparedness is critical to a move process, be it a temporary one, it's like a 2-year assignment, or permanently. I've done both, actually. So I've been on the receiving end of both. And, if you're moving over temporary, there's a whole load of tax treaties and stuff that you've got to work out, and you've got to figure out the adjustments and so on. When I moved over permanently, I had to re-account, if that's the right word, or restate my accounts, my British accounts, for the previous 7 years
Wow.
as part of the green card process. And it was an absolute nightmare. All the dates were wrong because the British go from April to May or April to April. The US is calendar. So you have, everything's 3 months out of sync. And then you
Yeah.
have to convert everything from pounds sterling to dollars at the relevant exchange rates. I mean, it went on. And it cost me a small fortune. I didn't have to quite rob a bank, but I was pretty close to. I should have given you a shout, actually. And
Yeah. Highly trained experts, James. You
maybe you were
understand that,
shotgun.
you know.
And yeah, and and you're so right. You need to plan these things in advance. You need to think them through in advance. Don't just get on the plane.
Yeah, well, I think that's some of it. I mean, you do get different types. You know, I'm helping a family move right now. They're moving over to the States from London, and they've been meticulous in their planning and going through their assets, their kids' assets, all sorts, to ensure that they fully understand the implications. But I know that probably next week I'm going to get a call from somebody who's, oh yeah, I've been in the US for the last 3 years and I haven't filed a tax return yet. What am I supposed to do? Yeah, we get all sorts, James. You wouldn't believe. And we also, I mean, it's not just foreign nationals coming here. We have a number of US people overseas who fall into delinquency for whatever reason, and that's that can be a big challenge getting people tidied up. But again, I think it's one of those things that I think a relocation can create, right? As this kind of, oh, that's kind of a hard thing to deal with a relocation. You know, I'm here now, I'm doing okay, but the taxes, that seems hard. I'll just kind of procrastinate on that a bit and leave it till the end. And that's when we can see people running into trouble, and really putting themselves in financial hard, in the sight of the IRS and financial hardship. They can take, in theory, they could take up to 50% of your non-declared foreign bank accounts. There's $10,000 penalties per form for missing foreign asset implications. So there's a lot of things, again, sort of referring back to that duty of care. And it's not just the US anymore, let's be honest. Other countries are looking for similar data. And I think it's going to be, again, it's something that, AI and technology will make it easier to supply those details to authorities. But you've got to know about that to do it. It's not going to happen automatically. You know the case, James. You don't land at JFK and there's a big sign saying, make sure you declare your foreign bank accounts if you're staying here a certain amount of time. It just doesn't happen. It's
Yeah.
it's
When I
amazing how many people don't know about that requirement until they've been here for several years. And yeah, a lot of people find out about it accidentally, as I'm sure you know. It's like, oh, I never knew I had to do that, and suddenly, oh, I've got a big problem here.
it's one of the big elephant traps that people just don't think about. You need a checklist of things to go through. I think one of the interesting things about you guys and your group is that you're very international, you're very global. Perhaps you could just expand on that a little bit, because this isn't just a local US problem or a local UK problem. It's a much bigger global situation, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are seeing, we at PKF, we have, I think it's 450 offices in something like 150 countries. So, we have the full global coverage. And certainly in the little over a year that I've been here, that's been necessary. Like you say, it's not just UK, US transfers anymore. We're seeing all sorts. Brazil is very active. A lot of people looking to move themselves are looking at places like Portugal and Malta. Even more Asian countries, we're seeing people looking at different alternatives, and even US people looking for additional passports to sort of spread their wings a little bit and have a bit more of a global footprint. But making sure that people are doing that in the right way can be pretty challenging, and it is that interaction of how do all the different countries work together, because it's not uniform. For example, I'm working on a client right now who's moving from the UK to Jersey, but then wants to spend time in the US. Now, that may seem a relatively straightforward situation, but the US doesn't have a tax treaty with Jersey where it does with the UK. So
Right.
that changes a lot of his US-based tax questions. So, there are things like that where you have to know what you're doing. And I'm sure it's the same as you. You can't move somebody from Australia to Hong Kong or Australia to London without having expertise on both sides of the equation, right? It doesn't really work like that. It's got to be end to end.
You're so right. In fact, I know the Channel Islands very well through our private client services, which is something I wanted to come on to with you, because Curzon, although we have a very active relocation summit, we cut our teeth as private client advisors in the real estate business. I mean, we chartered surveyors in the UK. Internationally, we're brokers in New York. We have all sorts of credentials. Our most recent ones are like project management, construction certification from Columbia University, and health and safety stuff. I mean, all the stuff comes in, but this stuff is really for mainly aimed at private clients or permanent assignees, people coming over and they want to buy a home. They might not buy it day one, they might rent somewhere first and shake it down. And families are interesting, aren't they?
Oh, yes.
High net worth, high net worth, I don't know how you define that. anyone with more than, certainly a few bob in their pocket and have the flexibility to move around. We found a lot of our private clients were professionals, actually, lawyers, bankers, people like that, as well as, a few from the sort of world of inheritance.
Yeah.
And with US inheritance tax thresholds at 15 million now, versus what is it? I think it's 325 times 2 in the UK. So I can't remember.
It's around that. It's not, if it's
Yeah,
any higher than that, it's maybe a little bit
yeah.
higher, but it's not
And
very high at all. No, it's
you get,
definitely a consideration.
yeah, and you get 1 million for your house or something. I mean, there's no comparison. And it's interesting you mentioned Jersey, because Jersey as your clients will know, many of my clients will know, and I'm sure our audience will know, is one of the leading tax neutral jurisdictions in the world. And very good and very complicated stuff to be working with. So how did tell me, tell our audience a little bit more about the work you do with private clients and high net worth individuals. How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I would say a lot of our work at the moment at PKF O'Connor Davies is with private client type individuals, and it's very interesting. It is different from mobility program work, because you have different priorities, you have different obviously different resources. But yeah, we do a considerable amount of private client high net worth work at PKF that is directly related to the international tax group, because families are becoming more and more international. It's just
Yeah.
part of it. It's interesting that there's a number of our high net worth clients where kids have gone overseas for education, perhaps, or something like that, and then stay. And then you do start getting into areas of like, okay, what does this mean for my wealth, my kids' wealth? What are they going to be subject to? All of those kind of things are, very different. I mean, I'm working with somebody right now. They've got one's American, one's one's American, one's from the UK. They've got a place in Singapore. They're moving back to the UK. They've got dual citizen kids. It's, we see a lot more of that, where these kind of international families have developed through, I guess originally maybe it was the traditional mobility programs, but now I think it's that willingness of people to look for adventure almost on their own and say, right, I want to try something different to what's gone before. And I think that certainly seems to be a purview of the high net worth clientele, that people within those families are looking for something different to what they've always had, and want to take a slightly different path maybe from what their family's always done. And we do a lot of that, and a lot of it is making sure that the compliance on a year-to-year basis is taken care of, so the right forms are declared and the right assets are reported in the right way. And then obviously as we stretch that out, then you have to start looking at wealth and how you manage that from a generation to generation perspective. As you've already said, if you've got a lot of assets in the UK, then you have to have proper plans in place. Unlike maybe in the US now, where you get a 15 million exemption, that's quite easy to manage in the majority of clients' cases, because that can be, it's 15 for man and wife, or wife and man, whatever you want to say. And, that at the moment for us in the US makes it, a lot of cases like, oh, you don't really need to worry about that. But then when somebody's overseas, you have to start looking into those different considerations of, well, what happens if? And that's certainly something that we do a lot of in our practice. And we have a great estate and trust practice here as well. We see a lot of that in the high net worth area, of people wanting to use trusts and different mechanisms. But again, the transportability of some of those trusts are not there yet in certain cases. What's a trust that might work overseas may not work in the US, and vice versa. And that can be true of any combination of countries. Of like, maybe, there are countries that don't recognize trusts. There are countries that don't recognize corporations in the same way. So, as soon as somebody starts traveling when they already have tax advice in place, we've got to be careful about, okay, does that travel well? Can that move from the UK to Jersey? Can it move from the UK to mainland Europe, wherever it may be? And a lot of the times it's really going to be dependent. And that's what makes it interesting, actually, James, is, a lot of times it's case by case. And, what do you specifically have, and how long has it been in place, and how long are you going for? It's, if I had a silver bullet, I would have invented it by now and be hopefully sitting on a beach somewhere, but I don't think it exists. So, I'm still here.
Well, you keep us all in business, I guess.
Yes, exactly.
There is that to be said for it. But you've hit so many nails right bang on the head there. Multi-generational is a good one. We often increasingly see in a private client world families moving together. So grandparents, parents, kids, kids of kids types of things, and almost like a sort of, not necessarily a family compound, although you do see those sort of things, but they sort of move within the same area. We've seen quite a bit of this going out of New York to Florida, actually, which is sort of interesting. New York, just to remind our listeners, New York City has its own state tax, in addition to New York City tax, rather, instead of. Anyway, the bottom line is, if you own a property in New York City, in Manhattan or Brooklyn or something, and you spend more than 180 days here, you fall into the New York City tax system.
Absolutely,
and they count the days, and they're very clever. So you hire a car, you arrive at an airport, well, they'll get you there. If you drive a car up and you go on a toll road, and their toll roads or whatever, they take a picture of your license plate, send you your bill, they've got you there. And it's the same situation that I have with clients actually in the Channel Islands. To the extent that some of them, I remember one guy, particularly a great guy, by the way, hugely successful, very entrepreneurial, made sure that he left literally before the stroke of midnight. He left London. I mean, it was sort of like, Cinderella type of thing. Except he would have been a lot poorer than Cinderella had it all backfired on him. So I think that's a very good point. We do quite a lot of the Middle East still, and we have worked with Middle Eastern families. And what's interesting there is how global they are as a family, but how businesslike they are as companies. They're often very diversified conglomerates. They might be in leisure, they might be in construction, they might be in communications, they might be in tech. And yet they have a small family office that looks after the immediate family. And we were working with a family a couple of years ago who bought 2 penthouses in the Hudson Yards development. As a sort of diversification investment strategy. It's a really interesting point. Relocation and mobility isn't just about companies. Companies are really important, and companies have their own challenges. But the whole private office side of life is an area that becomes increasingly active. No two jurisdictions are the same.
No, absolutely. And actually, James, can I ask you a question there? Because you're going to be more of an expert on this than I am. But I've heard about this New York pied-à-terre type tax that they've introduced. Is that something you're aware of?
Yes.
Where if you leave a property unoccupied, I think they're copying a Canadian model.
Yeah, I think it's a Mandami thing. I'm not 100% up to speed on it, to be honest with you, because there are a number of taxes floating around New York City at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, all aimed at raising money for affordable housing is a theory, but quite it's always a challenge of how that actually translates from collecting the money to turning it into reality. But yes, there is a pied-à-terre tax in the works. And maybe on the next episode, I can tell you a bit more about that. And you
Yeah, no, it's
probably
just
want to come
I have a
across it yourself.
client. I have a client going up to Vancouver, and part of their issue was, they were able to buy because I think they were Canadian national, or he was a Canadian national, something like that. But then it was
Yeah,
if you leave the property empty for a certain amount of time per year, you get hit with a real hike of what appears to be like a property tax, additional property tax, which is going to be
exactly.
interesting. I mean, we get asked the questions, but to your point, it's not really I'm an income tax guy, really. That looks more like a property tax penalty or something. I'd have to dig into it when I get more details, I think.
Well, I tell you something we are doing. And in fact, it's keeping this up my sleeve, Chris, but see here, we're having this chat. We're just about to launch a property management service here in New York. We're already brokers, but that's really supporting our clients. And the reason we're doing the property management service is a couple of reasons. Firstly, we're hugely successful and experienced in London. I mean, we're dealing international clients and so on. Secondly, people need their places checked on. They need to for insurance purposes, also to make sure that they're being maintained. This could include the payments of bills, tax bills, utility bills, service charge bills here, which in Manhattan in the co-ops and the condos can be excruciatingly high. And also, if you're outside of the country, you're in the Bahamas, you're in Switzerland, you're in Singapore, something comes up, you need someone who can go down there and sort it out, or talk to the board, or whatever it's going to be. I mean, it's one of the reasons we manage renovation works as a client's representative. And the whole idea of a client's representative is to make sure your clients is looked after and their assets are looked after and protected. And of course, that also has tax implications, as you say.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
but it's not just New York, it's London now, it's other parts of the world. But as I said, we're really sort of New York, London, or New York,
Yeah.
US, London, UK, and global. But sort of more cherry picking, client led on the global side. So, Chris, it's been a great conversation. So before we sort of sign off, just briefly, what's your view of the future? Where is all of this heading, do you think?
I'll tell you where I don't see a lot of it happening is hybrid work. This I think that's going to go away a little bit in terms of people working remotely. Oh, I want to do. When we came out of the pandemic, everybody was like, "Oh, everyone's going to work remotely, and no one's going to, people are going to be globe trotting, and people are going to be working from everywhere." It's happening a little bit, but not as much as people anticipated, I think. And I do think, with certain industries and with the economy maybe not being as strong as it has been, there's an opportunity there for a little bit of retrenchment from the market and saying, no, if you're working in a bank, we need you in 4 or 5 days a week. And I think that's slowly starting to happen. And again, I think that will, conversely, I think that's actually a good thing for the relocation business in terms of people moving, because, why would you move someone from London to New York, have all of that expense for them to work from home in New York? You really want them in the office sharing information and knowledge and institutional methodology, whatever it may be that you're moving that person for. And I think, a little bit why we've seen relocation drop off a little bit in the post-pandemic years is because of that lack of connection, or the lack of, well, what's the point in sending somebody if only 10% of the people are coming into the New York office? If that changes, then I think we might see the value of corporate relocation go back up. On the private side, where we've been talking a lot today, I don't see that slowing down. There are businesses out there, I'm sure you know them, the Henleys of the world who are talking with high net worth clients and saying, here are your options, here are, you know, here's how you diversify out of the UK or you diversify out of the US, you know, these old traditional markets, and people are looking for those opportunities, I think. And I think that continues. I think AI in that regard, and when I say AI, I just mean general access to information more than anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be automated, but it's more about, you know, I think people are more comfortable with being able to take on the world a bit more because there is more information available at people's fingertips, and they are able to say, right, well, I can get this bank account here, I can have these assets here, and I know how to report them, and I know what to do. And, you know, so I don't see that slowing down. How about yourself? What are you looking at in the future? I know,
Well,
you
I
know,
think you're right. I think there's a swing of the pendulum post-COVID. Certainly, some industries in particular, financial institutions, lawyers, professionals want to see people back in the office. Manufacturing, you know, robots haven't replaced everybody, and someone's got to run all these things. So I sort of tend to agree with you. I tend to agree with you. At the same time, I see a lot more personalization, a lot less of one size fits all, which is, you know, the cliche of the relocation world, where I've
yeah,
spent 25 years, and you've probably spent that at least, I would imagine. And you know, one of the nice things, one of the great things about tech hybrid delivery is apart from the cost savings. I mean, the cost savings can be colossal, like 60 to 80% of a
yeah,
traditional relocation. But it's very personalized. You know, you only get what you want. You only pay for what you need, type of thing. And you can pay for everything if you want, but it's very much about you as an individual. And we find people who we work with still go for full service, but they go for the full service they want and they need, not the one that they're going to be given and told to get on with.
yeah,
And that makes a huge difference. So sometimes we hardly communicate with people. We don't communicate with people all the time nonstop because they don't need it.
yeah,
And I think there's a generational thing about that on the way people communicate, Generation Z and the young millennials communicate. And that's why we do everything on a mobile phone. Doesn't mean we don't use computers. It doesn't mean you have to use an app, but it just makes life easier. Looking ahead, I think we're going to see more of that. And I think that's a good thing. And I think if you're, you know, if you're a young, nimble, agile company,
unlike us, you mean, James?
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, you couldn't get better examples, right?
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
so long your mindset's in the right place and so on. So, Chris, thank you very much. It's been an absolutely splendid conversation. And I've learned so much, and I'm sure the audience here has learned so much.
Thank you.
So if someone needs to get in touch with you, email address, website, would you like to just...
Yeah, absolutely. The email address is very easy to remember. It's just chall@pkfod.com. I'm on LinkedIn, easy to find on there. If anyone wants to look at, we have pkfod.com, which is the US site, and then there's pkf.com, which is the global site where you can see our coverage, and that's where I, channel a lot of my work through with colleagues around the world.
Okay, well, that's great. We'll put that on this video so our audience will be able to actually see it and pause it and take it down. Mine is, james.moss@CurzonCentral.com, which is our sort of parent company, if you like. As you and George, we're both very approachable people. At least I like to think so. So this has been
what should we talk about next time, James? I mean, that's the key question, isn't it?
Well, that's sort of, yeah, what I got to come on to in a way, because, there's so much out there to talk about. There's different sectors, there are different regions, there are different countries. And also, there's so much change in legislation, taxation, so on. And I think just want to keep people updated and so they know what's going on and they can think ahead. And maybe they have a couple of points of contact that they can now go to find out a bit more information and get a bit of help if they need it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great.
Well, thank you for having me, James.
Well, thank you very much for joining me, Chris. And I really look forward to our next engagement.
Indeed. Indeed.
All right. Take care. All the best.